Hello everyone, this is Rose Gold and welcome to part 1 of What If Naruto Was an Uchiha Remastered. Now this is actually the 1 year anniversary of this channel. While I did create it back in April, I uploaded my first video on the 11th of June 2020, so I just thought a remastered series would fit this. But without further ado, let's just get straight into it. As night fell upon the village of Konohagakure, a woman was screaming inside a room far away from the general population. That woman was Kushina Uzumaki, as she was giving birth to her and the fourth Hokage's son. Speaking of which, the fourth Hokage, Minato Uchiha, was currently right next to her, holding her hand tightly. Minato, being an Uchiha, had helped the Uchiha clan's reputation greatly, and they were now accepted all throughout the village. Although some people still found them disgusting and hated them, but no one paid any mind to those people, and Fugaku and Minato had a very good relationship. After a very loud scream, crying could be heard. It wasn't a woman crying, though. It was a small black-haired child with whisker-like marks on his face. As Minato walked in to hold the child, his hand was smacked away by the old lady who was helping giving birth to the child, which surprised him greatly until she spoke. "The mother holds the child first." Then she tutted, whispering, "No manners." Minato laughed a little as he watched her hold their child. Looking a little closer, the boy looked very similar to him. But he had some of his mother's feature. His smile, for example, was one of them, and unknowingly to him, now his manner of speaking would be the same as well. As Minato held the child, suddenly the masked man entered the room, and well, we all know what happened after that. So finally, at the end, Minato sealed half the Nine Tails into his son, and then died together with his wife, leaving a son named Naruto Uchiha, an orphan. A few years ahead, Naruto was walking around the village. He had an Uchiha symbol on a blue collar shirt. He was now 4 years old, and the entire village had suddenly turned on him. The Uchiha wanted to take him in, but because of the suspicion of them being the cause of killing the fourth, they were not allowed to. But Naruto was still very good friends with some of the Uchiha, such as Itachi Uchiha, Fugaku Uchiha, and his best friend, Sasuke Uchiha. He wasn't at all related to them, except for their Uchiha blood, but after convincing the third Hokage and Naruto begging for him for several minutes on end, he finally relented and let Naruto stay with their family for now. At the home he was treated as family, although Fugaku seemed a little too fond of him, as he trained the boy to his absolute limit. They were planning on Naruto being their main defense from the village if the coup d'etat was actually going to happen. One day, Naruto came back from training with the entire Uchiha clan. He had finally awakened his Sharingan due to the stress and panic of having to fight 20 members of the Uchiha clan, his fighting, training, and was able to defeat every single one of them. But they weren't that high level, and Itachi walked up to him. Suddenly, Naruto collapsed in his arms, as his Sharingan had drained him, and beating 20 Uchiha clan members, although the majority of them were only Genin, but Naruto himself had only just joined the academy, so this was no easy feat, made him very sleepy, and he was drained. He was a prodigy at the level of Itachi. Not just that, he was much higher. But there is another prodigy looming in the shadows. That, of course, being Sasuke. Sasuke had been training non-stop to keep up with Naruto, not just for his own sake, but so Naruto always had a sparring partner and friend within the same level of power as him. But he was getting a lot of help by not just Itachi but Shisui as well. But one day Shisui disappeared, and a month later, everyone had been killed by Itachi except for Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto thought Itachi was a good guy and had done it to prevent something big, but Sasuke just thought Itachi was a mass murderer and was rather hostile. And they had become rather hostile every time they saw each other. But deep inside, they knew they both hoped to become best friends again in the future, but no one wanted to say it, even though they both wanted to. We skip ahead to the Genin graduation mission. Naruto was currently last in class. You might be confused by this. I mean, Naruto was able to defeat several Genin at the age of 4, so how was he last place? But the answer to that is easily explainable. Naruto thought very little of the academy. He put a greater emphasis on training on his own and perfecting the techniques he knew. But there was one thing he should pay more attention to. That, of course, being the clone jutsu. Most of the class laughed themselves hoarse whenever Naruto was called up to present his clone jutsu, as there have been several embarrassing moments, such as when he only cloned his clothes, when he only transported his clothes, leaving him naked, and when he produced a clone. Although like its soul had left its body and it wasn't even able to stand. But Naruto told himself it wasn't going to be like that this time. He had trained so hard for this. At home, he managed to produce a single clone, so doing this now would be easy, right? Well, sadly not. As Naruto was called into the room, the only thing he created was another clone, which crumpled to the ground. The clone had a very pale skin and no muscles at all. It seemed it was just pitiful, really. Iruka had a very strong dislike for Naruto. It wasn't for anything he had done, but the mix of being an Uchiha, who was thought to be the cause of the Nine Tails attack and the subsequent death of his family, but he was also carrying that exact same beast inside of him. But deep inside, Iruka loved the boy as if he was his little brother. But of course he wasn't going to admit that, so he said, "Absolutely dreadful. You're pitiful, Naruto. You failed." Naruto's face dropped to one of deep disappointment, but also fury. Why did they have to do this jutsu specifically? Naruto's eyes suddenly turned red in frustration and anger as he stormed out. He was going to learn the clone jutsu and nothing was going to stop him, but suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. Mizuki Sensei, who was the other teacher of the academy, had stopped him and then proceeded to tell him about the scroll of sealing and all that. Naruto nodded as his usual smile started to appear back on his young face as he quickly moved out at night and stole the scroll of skilling without being detected and moved on to the deep part of the forest where he began to learn. He learned both the basics of the flying Raijin jutsu and the multi shadow clone jutsu, but suddenly Iruka walked up to him out of the shadows. "The game's up now, Naruto. You screwed up massively." Naruto took a step back. "What are you talking about?" Iruka looked a little dumbfounded, then said, "You stole the scroll of sealing. That's an immense crime." "But basically, since said I could graduate if I learned the jutsu from this," Naruto said. Naruto looked dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" But before Naruto could answer, a voice came out of the shadows in the tree. "He means exactly what he just said, Iruka," he said in contempt and threw a shuriken at Naruto, who dodged quickly. "What the hell?" Naruto shouted in surprise, but now Mizuki had him right where he wanted him, and he threw a massive shuriken at Naruto, who tried to dodge, but he realized he was stuck on the ground. But as the shuriken was about to hit him, something blocked it. It was Irika. Irika started to cry, not because of the pain, but because of Naruto's surprised expression when he protected him. As a teacher, it was his job to protect his students. To see a student so surprised that the teacher, the man who he should look up to, protect him was a thing he could never live down. As Naruto saw Iruka protecting him, he realized Mizuki had lied to him. Mizuki was trying to use him, and Naruto wasn't going to let himself be played like this. So he activated the Sharingan, which unlocked a new Tomoe in both eyes as the fury in Naruto's heart. As he flew at Mizuki, beating him so hard with both the multi-shadow clone jutsu and fireballs that he was so close to death that if Naruto landed just another punch on him, he'd die. After seeing this astounding display of skill and power, Iruka told Naruto to close his eyes, and when Naruto opened them again, he had become a ninja. Now, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to check the one I linked on screen out right now, as I'm sure you'd like it as well, but without further ado, I'll see you all in the next part. See ya!